Our region's business is sponsored by PNC for the achiever in you.
Why do some companies speed ahead of others, even when they're founded around the same time with similar products and market opportunities? After all, for every Facebook, there seems to be a Friendster, and for every McDonald's, a White Castle. Well, the science of growth may provide the answer. It's the title of a new book by Ammirati, a Pittsburgh-based venture capitalist and adjunct professor of entrepreneurship at Carnegie Mellon University. And welcome. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, so you've got all the answers here on the mystifying part of how do you really scale companies, because that's so many startups seem to falter before they ever get into that growth phase.
That's right. So I mean, the idea here is I think over the last 5 years we've gotten much better at helping entrepreneurs understand what they need to go from taking that kind of amorphous idea and getting that first product out there, delivering value to customers. And I think that's amazing. I think it's made entrepreneurship better. It's certainly made the courses we teach at CMU better. But actually what started as feedback from my students, the next challenge is actually one that a lot more people are interested in, which is how do you go from that point to a scaled up startup? And so what started as an independent study turned into a course, and then ultimately turned into the book you're holding in your hands there.
So it leveraged all the students to help you do the research and figure this out. But I know what the answer is. And it's money. I'm that bright young entrepreneur. All I have to do is get to you at Birchmere. You buy my idea. You give me enough money. I'm going to grow, right?
It sure would be great if that was the case. It would make my job a lot easier, right? If it was as simple as putting money in and just turning the crank and more money comes out the other end. Unfortunately, I think having the right financial structure is important, but it's not the only thing at all. And what we try to do is we try to help entrepreneurs in the book understand where they are in the life cycle of their business and then the things to be focused on at that point.
So say you've got the product, you've found the market, it looks like the market's big enough to create a real opportunity and make some real money over time. So then what's the next level that people tend to miss?
Yeah, so to me that the next step is helping the world first become aware of your product. And these are things that actually later we'll often call the launch of the company, but it turns out it often happened long after their company was started. And so one of the ways I like to look at entrepreneurs is entrepreneurs create the world the way the world ought to be, but it often takes the world some time to catch up. And so what we talk about in the second section of this book is what we call catalyzing events, or these things that take all those raw ingredients and really change the slope of the line of the growth of that business.
Now, can you control those catalyzing events, or do they tend to just fall into the lap of lucky companies?
Yeah, so I think some of luck is working hard and creating those opportunities, right? So what we try to do is we talk about 4 broad categories of catalyzing events. And the way I encourage entrepreneurs to think about it is think of these as a toolkit of the kind of things you can be on the lookout for to proactively try to create those catalyzing events. So a really interesting example from the book is Twitter. So most people, if you say, hey, where did Twitter start? They'll tell you Twitter started at South by Southwest in 2007. It actually turns out Twitter started about 10 months before that. But South by Southwest 2007 is when the world first became aware of Twitter. So we talk in the book about what we call prerequisites, and we talk about 4 of them. And the idea here is, just like you can't do calculus before you know algebra, you shouldn't focus on these catalyzing events or ultimately sustaining that growth until you satisfy these 4 prerequisites.
And so what are the prerequisites?
The prerequisites start with the founder's core vision. So one of the things I think that people overlook is that the founder has this sort of unique view of the world, right? Creating the world the way it ought to be, if it's obvious that the world ought to be that way, someone else has probably already done it, right? So things that look obvious in hindsight often aren't at the time. So there's this founder's core vision, and then there's the market's large enough and it actually solves a real problem, or what venture capitalist Mark Andreessen has termed product market fit. So I'd call those the second and third. And then the 4th one is one that I think a surprising number of entrepreneurs look at, which is in those early phases, your customers tend to be these early adopters who will put up with awkward first interactions. But when you move from satisfying those first 3 prerequisites to working on these catalyzing events and ultimately sustaining that growth, you need to make sure that first time a customer picks up your product, the interaction with it is excellent. Because you can't have any friction when you enter this stage of rapid growth, or you'll end up kind of running in place, treading water.
So I can remember from the movie about the founding of Facebook, and I don't know how accurate it is or not, but I remember the one line in the movie, I've never forgotten it, Facebook can never go down.
That's right.
Right?
Right. And they did interesting things to make that first experience magical, right? So they did things that on the surface would seem almost crazy, like restricting access to it only to a certain number of universities, or you had to be have a .edu email address, right? So they created these sort of artificial constraints to make that first interaction on the network much more valuable and much more excellent.
And then you can just ripple out from
That's
there.
right.
Nail that, get that core going.
That's right. And then look at the catalyzing events to really change the slope of the line.
Fascinating stuff. Obviously just the beginning. A lot more in the science of growth to get entrepreneurs from that point on forward. Sean Ammirati, congratulations. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And we'll be back in a minute with little dollars and cents. Stay with us.